There are so many colors in Magic the Gathering. Blue, red, green, white, and black. But there's a secret sixth color you might not think about, and that is no color. The absence of color. I was going to ask that this video be edited in black and white, and then I realized black and white are colors in Magic the Gathering, so, don't do that. But could you build a whole commander deck with no colors in it? Yes, people do it all the time. There's quite a few colorless popular commanders. But are there unpopular colorless commanders? Also, yes. God, I'm going to double check it. Not even close. Today we're talking about Marvin the Murderous Mimic from Duskmorne. It's a 2/2 for 2 colorless mana, and it has all activated abilities of creatures you control. He's a great combo piece to put in other decks if your commander with a lot of colors has some sort of activated ability that you can then activate. But he can also pilot his own deck by being a freaky little guy. The biggest challenge with colorless mana is other colors have an identity. Green, good at ramping. Red, is good at drawing cards and going through the deck. Blue is good at everything. But without colors in your deck, you don't get any of these abilities of any of these things, except that, well, no, you still do. You just gotta work a little harder for it. So first, let's get some mana, some colorless mana, because we can't have any colors. Automated Artificer lets you tap it for a colorless mana to activate an ability, or cast an artifact spell. There's a lot of artifact creatures in this deck. We'll talk about that a little bit later because it is a bit of a weakness. Cryptic Trilobite comes in with some +1/+1 counters on it, depending on how much mana you spent to cast it, and you can remove a +1/+1 counter to get 2 colorless mana. Same thing happens with Marvin, because those are all activated abilities. Crystalline Crawler lets you remove +1/+1 counters from it to add 1 mana of any color. You can also tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Removing the +1/+1 for the mana and tapping it are activated abilities, meaning Marvin can do it. If Marvin gets +1/+1 counters from a different source, they're still +1/+1 counters and work for all of your things with +1/+1 counters, which will matter later. Foundry Inspector doesn't give you mana, it just makes all of your artifacts cost 1 less to cast, but that is very good. It gives you a discount, it's effectively ramp. Glaring Flesh Raker gives you a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn token whenever you cast a colorless spell. All of the spells in this deck are colorless. Also, when a colorless permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Objection! Takes 1 damage. Technically a different thing. Hedron Crawler taps for a colorless mana. Joyra's Familiar gives a 1 colorless mana discount to historic spells you cast. That is artifacts, legendary creatures, and sagas. No sagas in this one. It's not Neva again, but artifacts there are aplenty. Kozilek's Channeler just taps for 2 mana, and that's important later. Keep an eye on tapping for 2 mana. Mannequin taps for 1 colorless mana. Ornithopter of Paradise taps for 1 mana of any color. Yours will have no colors, that's fine. Palladium Mirror taps for 2 colorless mana. Pila Pala gives you a mana of any color when you untap it, and you can pay 2 mana to untap it. This is where we talk about glimpsing the infinite. Infinite? Why did I say it with an M? If you have Marvin and Palladium Mirror or Kozilek's Channeler, that means Marvin the Mimic can tap for 2 colorless mana. If you have Pili Pala out, it costs 2 mana to untap it to add 1 mana of any color. So, you tap Marvin for 2 mana, then you use that 2 mana to untap him and gain a mana. This is infinite mana. You have infinite mana, and because it requires 3 cards to do it, it doesn't count as a 2-card infinite combo, and still stays at bracket 2. Brackets are fun. Walking Atlas lets you tap it to put a land onto the battlefield. If you just have a lot of lands in your hands, you can use this to put them onto the board instead, so you have them. And then we have our artifact ramp. Basalt Monolith taps for 3 mana, but doesn't untap during your untap steps. You gotta pay 3 mana to untap it. Seems kind of bad, but there are ways in this deck that make it work pretty dang good. Especially if you have discounts on your artifact spells or your colorless spells, this can come out for 2 mana, or 1 mana, or 0 mana, and effectively be 3 free mana. Cloud Key lets you discount your artifact spells by 1, it's another discount. Dreamstone Hedron can tap for 3 mana. Later, if you've got enough mana, you can sack it for some card draw. Everflowing Chalice is something you can kick. Do you like to kick? The more you kick this, the more charge counters it has, and the more charge counters it has, the more mana it can tap for. This is a great mana rock in this deck because no matter where you're at in the game, no matter how much mana you have per turn, this comes in and gives you more mana. You play it early, it's worth 1 or 2 mana. You play it late, it's worth 5 or 6 mana next turn. Or this turn, actually. Even this turn, yeah. It doesn't come in tapped. Like, you can tap it. It doesn't have summoning sickness. It's an artifact. Forsaken Monument gives colorless creatures you control +2/+2. It also makes it so that every time you tap a colorless source for mana, you get an additional colorless mana, effectively doubling your mana. Also, you get 2 life every time you cast a colorless spell. All of the spells in this deck are colorless. It's a colorless deck. Gilded Lotus taps for 3 mana. Hedron Archive taps for 2 mana, and you can sack it later if you need card draw. Liquid Metal Torque taps for 1 mana. You can also turn non-artifact creatures into artifact creatures if you need that weird synergy. Mind Stone taps for 1 mana, and you can sack it for card draw. Soul Ring taps for 2 mana. It's the commander card. This is in every commander deck. If it's not in your commander deck, that's weird. You should put it in there probably. Stone Speaker Crystal adds 2 mana of any color, and then later you can sack it for card draw. Thought Vessel taps for 1 mana, and makes it so you have an unlimited hand size, which is important. We are going to get a lot of card draw later. Thran Dynamo taps for 3 mana. Unstable Obelisk taps for 1 mana, and you can pay 7 mana to destroy target permanent and sacrifice the obelisk, so it's also removal, which can be harder to get in no colors. Worn Power Stone comes in tapped, and then it taps for 2 mana. Forgot about 1 more discount source. Ugin the Ineffable makes all of your colorless spells cost 2 less to cast. You get this out with some other discounts, and you're going to start waterfalling cards out of your hand. It's pretty neat. Hey, remember when I said we had unlimited mana? Let's exploit that more. If you have unlimited mana and have Farmstead Gleaner out, this is another one where you pay 2 mana to untap it, and then you put a +1/+1 onto Farmstead Gleaner. Now, any instance of a card having its own name on the card just means it's its own thing. So that would mean Marvin could put an unlimited number of +1/+1 counters on itself. That's an infinitely big Marvin. That's a pretty big boy. How big is infinity? It's a lot. Pair that with a Walking Ballista. When you play Walking Ballista, make sure you play it last. This comes in with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the number of times it was kicked, and you can pay 4 to add a +1/+1 counter to it. Then you can remove +1/+1 counters from it to deal 1 damage to any target. So if you go infinite with your mana and have an unlimited number of +1/+1 counters on Marvin, you win by just dealing 1 damage to everyone all of the time. Pretty good. It's also worth noting that this is done at 1 instance of 1 damage at a time. So something like a Deflecting Palm, which redirects damage, it's only going to redirect 1 damage. It's not going to redirect the 49 billion damage. But to get to these infinite things, you need to be drawing cards. So check out Mindless Automaton. When you remove 2 +1/+1 counters from it, you get to draw a card. If you have unlimited +1/+1 counters, that means you have unlimited card draw, which means you can draw until you find Walking Ballista and say, hello, I win the game, let's play another one, everyone. Steel Hellkite has pay 2 mana to get +1/+0 until end of turn. Then you can pay X to destroy each non-land permanent worth X that is dealt damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. That's not the thing. This is just, if you have unlimited mana and don't have another source to put +1/+1 counters on Marvin, this is an infinitely big Marvin. Infinitely large Marvins go well with Giggling Skitter Spike. This is indestructible. You can pay 5 to make it monstrous and put 5 +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever it attacks, it deals damage equal to its power to creatures you don't control. Now, this is a triggered ability. This is not an activated ability, but the monstrosity is an activated ability. So you can use it to put 5 +1/+1 counters onto Marvin. Having +1/+1 counters on Marvin is good. There are so many cards that want you to remove +1/+1s for some sort of utility. There is also the event that you just build up your Giggling Skitter Spike by moving around +1/+1 counters and getting +1/+1 counters from other sources until it just deals a ton of damage to everything. Think of a card like Steel Overseer, which you can tap to put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact creature you control. If you have this out and Marvin out early, you can tap both of them and put 2 +1/+1 counters on each artifact creature you control. This is a deck where it's less about making a specific combo happen and more about having so many cards that synergize with Marvin that every time you play the game, you will get a new form of greatness from Marvin. Or you'll do the Walking Ballista combo. You can just do the Walking Ballista combo if you draw that. We've got forms of protection in here, of course. A Marthine Wall lets you pay 2 to make it indestructible until end of turn, but that also means Marvin can pay 2 to make himself indestructible. Cryptothal gives artifact creatures you control hexproof, making it so that nobody can target Marvin if Marvin is Marvinin all over the place. Soul of New Phyrexia is expensive. You gotta pay 6 to put it out, and then you gotta pay 5 to make permanents you control indestructible until end of turn. If it's in the graveyard, you can also pay 5 to exile it. So if this dies and you still want that effect and still have the mana for it, go for it. You should have the mana for it. Mana is not that hard to get in this deck. I don't know if you listened to all of the ways we have to gain mana. As far as access to mana goes, Unwinding Clock is great for that, untapping all artifacts you control at the beginning of each player's untap step. That includes something like Basalt Monolith, which is not supposed to untap on your untap step, but it doesn't say anything about anyone else's untap step. So, Unwinding Clock. 3 mana every turn. To do shenanigans. More instant speed shenanigans. Eldritch Immunity gives target creature you control protection from color sources. Most removal spells are colorful, unless they're in this deck, then they are using colored mana. You can also overload it for 5 mana to give that to every creature you control. Null Elemental Blast counters target multicolored spell or destroys a multicolored permanent. You know what a lot of multicolored permanents are? Other people's commanders. If they're not playing one of the monocolor commanders or a colorless commander, they are playing a multicolored commander, and you can remove them with 1 colorless mana. Kozilek's Command has a bunch of options. You get to choose 2. It also costs X amount of mana, so if you have a bunch of extra mana, you can channel it into the X. You can make a number of 0/1 Eldrazi spawn tokens for yourself or for someone else. If someone is being swung at and they are the only one who can counter an opponent's abilities and you think they're gonna die, you can give them blockers. If someone needs mana really bad to handle a threat, you can give them these 0/1 tokens that sacrifice for a colorless mana. You can be helpful. Probably give it to yourself though. Target player scries X and then draws a card. Again, probably use it for yourself, but all of this says target player, so you can choose someone else. Exile target creature with mana value X or less, so just some straight up removal. And you can exile up to X cards from graveyards if you see someone doing some reanimator shenanigans you don't like. Warping Whale is also modular, giving you a bunch of different options. You can make a 1/1 Eldrazi spawn token that sacks for 1 mana. You can counter target sorcery spell like a Jeska's Will, or you can exile a creature with power or toughness 1 or less if you just want to spite someone's mana dork. We've also got some sorceries, and these are big, dumb, and expensive, but remember, we've got big, dumb, expensive colorless mana. All is Dust makes each opponent sacrifice all the colorful permanents they control. They get to keep their soul rings, their arcane signets. Most of their creatures probably gone. Worth noting, lands are not colors. Forest is not a green card. Lands are all colorless. They get to keep their lands. Rise of the Eldrazi cannot be countered. It costs 12 mana, so God, I hope it can't. You destroy a non-land permanent. You draw 4 cards. You get to take an extra turn after this one. And because there is only 1 extra turn spell in this deck, it is still bracket 2. We don't have a bunch of them. But we do have this one, and this is a pretty good one. The most important card in this deck is Driller Works Mole. You can pay 2 and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on it and a commander you control. I think it's a funny card. It's a little mole. That's why it's in here. That's why I like it, and that's why I say it's the most important card in the deck. Also, because of the wording on it, when Marvin activates this ability, that's just 2 +1/+1 counters for Marvin. And that's pretty funny. So, what are you trying to do with this deck? You are trying to draw into your value pieces to create fun combos that happen because your commander can do all of the things all of your creatures can do. Anything they can do, it can do better. Anything it can do, better than you. Something like that. Get a bunch of colorless mana, make your weird little guy, and win with a degenerate combo. And that's a big combo you didn't need any color to make. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, subscribe for more. We're going to be moving into the 3 colors soon. Join the Patreon to vote for the 3 color deck you want to see first. That's the place to do it. Check out Tulok and Mango. We're probably playing Night Rain right about now. And check us out on Twitch if you want to watch us streaming Night Rain. Thanks again to Kate for editing this video. Bye-bye.